Hi everyone, Coach Sipho here. On this channel's very first tutorial, you learned how to move all the chess pieces. On that tutorial, I taught you that a rook cannot jump other pieces. I also taught you that a player can only move one piece at a time when it is their turn. So you must be shocked to see this guy moving two pieces at the same time. Also seeing his rook jumping other pieces. What's wrong with this guy? Doesn't he know how to play chess? The answer is nope. He knows how to play chess. And that is the special move for the king called castling. Therefore, in today's tutorial, you are going to learn how to do castling. And you are also going to learn 6 scenarios where castling is not possible. So let's jump into it. The reason I did not include castling on that first tutorial is because this move can be a bit complex at times, so I felt it deserves a tutorial of its own. As you play more and more games, you will notice that the 4 central pawns tend to be exchanged, leaving the kings in the open and vulnerable. If it wasn't of this special move called castling, games wouldn't last as long. If you watched the first tutorial, then you definitely know that a king can move only one square to any direction. You also know that a rook moves like a cross, as many squares as they want, but they cannot jump. However, when you do castling, your king must move 2 squares towards the rook, and your rook must leap over the king to the other side. This is the only time in the game where your king will be allowed to move more than 1 square. And it is also the only time in the game where the rook is allowed to jump other pieces. Castling puts your king into safety. As you can see that after castling, your king is protected by pawns, whereas before castling, it is in the open. It is important to note that you can castle on either side of the board. You can castle that side or that side. It doesn't matter on which side you decide to castle to. One thing is true, you always move the king 2 squares. And the rook must jump to the other side. For example, if you castle on the king side, 1, 2, then the rooks must jump to the other side. Even if you were castling on the other side, we call that the queen side. Your king must move 2 squares, 1, 2, and the rook must jump to the other side. Now that you know how to do castling, it is time to learn about the 6 scenarios where castling is not possible. Scenario 1, you cannot do castling if your king has moved already. Let's say your king has moved. Even if your king can move back to its initial square, but the fact that your king has moved, you are no longer allowed to do castling. Scenario 2, you cannot do castling when there is a piece between the king and the rook. For example, you cannot castle on the queen side anymore because there is a piece in between, but you can still do castle on the king side because there is no piece in between. Scenario 3, a king cannot jump a square that is attacked when you do castling. For example, in this position, white cannot castle on the queen side because in doing so, it would be jumping a square that is attacked by the bishop. So white cannot castle on the queen side, but white can still do castle on the king side. Scenario 4, you cannot do castling when you are already in a check. For example, in this position, white cannot do castling because he or she is already in a check. You cannot do castling when you are already in a check. You need to get out of check first, then later you can do castling when you are not in a check. Scenario 5, you cannot do castling using the rook that has moved. For example, let's say the white's rook was there. In this position, even if white can decide to move the rook to its initial square, white cannot castle on the king side because that rook has moved already. However, white can still castle on the queen side because that rook hasn't moved. In short, you can only castle with pieces that haven't moved at all. Scenario 6. You cannot do castling if your king is going to land on a square that is attacked. For example, in this position, white can no longer castle on the king's side, because in doing so, you would land on a square that is attacked by a rook. Congratulations, now you've learned how to do castling. You've also learned about the 6 scenarios where castling is not possible. If you found this tutorial helpful, please share it with other people, click thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next week.